Welcome to the comfy zone. Make yourself at home.
Earlier this year, I found myself in need of a new pair of headphones. I usually avoid buying from sites other than the big ones with free 2-day shipping, but just this once, I decided to give something else a try. I'd heard from my friends for the longest time that they often buy from a site that sells products that usually end up on the big online stores after being repackaged and marked up. So I finally decided it was time for me to check out what all the fuss was about. I found a pair that was advertised as having sound quality that rivals headphones that would usually sell for $200 or $300, and the padded ear cups in the photos looked like they would probably be comfortable to wear for long sessions. Even better was the fact that they were only $6. I was skeptical and thought that the price was probably a sign of the quality, but I bought the headphones anyway. Weeks passed, and to nobody's surprise, when my headphones arrived, there was something wrong. The headphones seemed like a different pair entirely than the pair that I had ordered, and to top it off, these looked more like earmuffs than headphones. To make matters worse, there wasn't anything about their design that made them particularly comfortable either. Instead, they felt rough and heavy. I assumed there must have been a mistake when my order was processed, or that maybe I'd been scammed. I contacted customer service using the Contact Us form on their website, asking if I could exchange them for the headphones I'd actually paid for. A few hours later, after waiting impatiently for a response, I received one saying that the company doesn't do exchanges, and that I should contact the manufacturer directly. The problem was that there was no information about who manufactured the headphones in any of the packaging the headphones came with. All I knew for sure was that they weren't even close to the product described on the website. As I sat there planning on just cutting my losses, my phone rang. I checked the caller ID, and it seemed like someone was calling me back to help with my exchange. I answered right away, hoping that someone would help me get what I originally ordered, but the woman on the other end of the line said she worked for the company that made the headphones, and that the best thing I could do was return them to the store where I purchased them. I explained that the online store I bought them from told me the same thing, and the line went silent. I could hear her breathing, and it sounded like she was shuffling things around in front of her, so I knew she was still there, but she never responded. "Hello?" I asked, hoping she just got distracted and would tell me how I could get a refund, but when she finally responded, she scoffed and began to laugh like she had just heard a joke I wasn't in on. Then she hung up. I tried calling the number back, but it just rang without anyone picking up. I sat feeling defeated, but figured I was only out $6 and I just needed to move on with my day. I was tempted to just throw away the headphones, but I figured I'd at least been sent something, so I might as well see if they were any good. I inspected them to see if there was any way to plug them into my phone or at least connect to Bluetooth, but all I could find were wires that didn't seem to end anywhere outside of the headband or the ear cups. Despite not being able to connect them to my phone, I put them on to see if they would at least work as a decent pair of earmuffs. When I put them on, nothing happened at first, which was expected since I couldn't figure out how to connect them. But suddenly, and without any warning, I heard faint voices in my head. Very quiet whispers, but distinct enough for me to recognize. One voice sounded like it belonged to a woman who was crying and praying for someone. Another voice spoke calmly, as if the speaker was trying to console whoever it was that was whispering in my ear. As strange as it was, I felt compelled to listen. One voice that sounded like it belonged to a man said, "You don't need to worry." He sounded very reassuring, and his tone was pleasant, almost comforting, though I couldn't understand how I was hearing the voice in my head. At the same time, it seemed to come from somewhere else, not inside my own head, and somehow outside of the headphones. I removed them and became more aware of my surroundings, realizing I had nearly forgotten I was sitting on the couch in my living room when I first put them on. It reminded me of times when I was a kid, and I realized while watching a movie that my brain seemed to filter out everything in front of me other than the screen. But now that I had taken the headphones off, my apartment looked the same as it did before I had put them on. I decided to try listening to the voices again, this time paying closer attention to what they were talking about, but the second time I put them on, I could hardly hear the voices over a sort of humming sound. It sounded like somebody deep in meditation, but much louder. In fact, it was so loud that it drowned out all the other sounds and voices, and even made it difficult to distinguish one thought from another. My head started gently pounding, and I took the headphones off to give myself a break since I couldn't understand the voices this time anyway. I wondered if the humming had less to do with the sound coming from the headphones and more to do with the beginning stages of a migraine. I took the headphones off and tried again to see if I might have overlooked any carefully concealed buttons or any other way to connect the headphones to something, but I still couldn't find where the wires ended. I put the headphones back on and walked to the bathroom to find something to help with the migraine, then made my way to my bedroom. Still wearing the headphones, I threw myself onto the bed and turned off my bedside lamp so I could try to sleep off the pain that was rapidly expanding behind my left eye. In what must have been a matter of minutes, I felt like I was in a dream, but unlike most lucid dreams, I didn't have any control over my own body or where I was. I looked up and saw long fluorescent light bulbs and rectangular ceiling tiles. It seemed like I was lying in some sort of bed, but when I tried moving my arms to lift myself up, nothing happened. It was then that I realized I was lying in a hospital bed. When I looked down at my body, I saw that I was covered in tubes attached to various parts of my body. My arm, my chest, my legs. There was also a bag strapped to my stomach. Because it seemed like there was nothing I could do, I just observed the room filled with medical devices and the sound of a heart monitor. The door swung open and I could see a nurse walk in. She was middle-aged, in her 40s maybe, and appeared to be rather attractive, but she wore a stern expression. "How are we doing today, Mr. O'Malley?" she asked. She waited a moment and continued. "Your parents stopped by earlier. They're worried sick about you, so let's get you up and moving, all right?" She started walking around the room while looking over a chart that she was carrying around and began checking the displays of the machines I was hooked up to. Without even a glance at me for brief eye contact, she said, "The good news is that you're looking better today than when you came in. Let's just keep that up, all right?" I saw her inject some sort of liquid into the IV bag that was attached to me, and I thought I heard her starting to speak to me again, but her words became distorted, and I could hardly remember a word she said after she said it. A moment later, I woke up in my own bed. The headache was gone, and aside from my ears ringing, I felt great. In fact, it was like I woke up with a new sense of clarity, despite not immediately remembering much about my dream. It wasn't until later that day that seeing the headphones made me remember the strange events in my bedroom, and the dream of being in a hospital bed. I began to wonder if the headphones played a role in my dream. I had heard about something called binaural beats and how listening to different frequencies could impact a person's sleep, so I figured that must have been what I experienced. On the other hand, I still couldn't find any way to connect the headphones to anything, so I couldn't explain how it would be possible for them to play recordings of the voices, unless these came pre-programmed like a pair of display headphones. The next week or so was mostly like any other week, though I'd periodically put the headphones on to see if I could solve the mystery of how these things really worked. A lot of the time, wearing the headphones gave me a headache, probably because the tightness of the headband. Despite this, one evening I decided to test whether wearing the headphones to sleep would cause a dream similar to the one I had before, so I turned out the lights, put on the headphones, and drifted off to sleep. It seemed like no time had passed between when I laid my head on the pillow and when I began to dream. As soon as I opened my eyes, I only saw a dim glow, a soft white light that felt soothing and comforting. I tried to sit up, but again, I was stuck in a hospital bed being monitored. The same nurse as before, as well as a doctor and two other people who also looked like nurses, were staring intently at one of the displays for the equipment attached to me. They spoke softly, and after a moment, I knew they were talking about me. As I listened, they talked about how I had been involved in an accident that I couldn't recall, which left me in a coma. Being in this vulnerable state made me wonder why I had so little control over what I was experiencing, if this was some sort of lucid dream. The conversation between the doctor and the nurses caused me to feel a nauseating level of dread, and I wondered if it was possible to suffer sleep paralysis while in the middle of a dream. I even began to wonder if wearing the headphones to bed might have trapped me in a dream that I couldn't escape. As though the dream was reacting to my anxiety and fear, the beep of the heart rate monitor began speeding up until it caught the attention of the hospital staff. One of the nurses jotted something down on her chart, and after examining me for a moment, they all went back to the work they had been doing. Their reaction to my body's physical response made me wonder if what I was experiencing was even a dream at all. The nurse from my first dream spoke with a hopeful tone as she talked with the other nurses about how my parents and sister had visited me frequently since I was admitted. She said the way my family would stop by daily to talk to me even though I couldn't respond showed a level of determination that she knew I must also have just by being a part of their family. What she seemed most optimistic about was that my sister had the idea to help me come out of the coma by putting on a pair of headphones and playing some of my favorite songs. When she mentioned the headphones, I remembered that I had put on my own pair before going to bed, which made my heart rate increase again. The nurses checked on me again while continuing their conversation, and it sounded like I had just missed my sister. The nurse said she believed that my sister's idea was helping, and that even though it was hard to tell, it seemed like I was responding when my sister would put the headphones on me. Then, just like in the previous dream, I watched one of the other nurses inject something into the IV bag attached to me. The doctor and nurses left the room, and all there was left to observe was the feeling of my fluctuating heart rate and the sounds of the machines. Considering how much longer this dream had been, I wondered whether I was even still dreaming. But as the delirium of whatever the nurse had put in the IV began to work, I found myself lying on my bed in my room, with the headphones slightly pushed off my head. I awoke to the sound of my alarm clock going off. Waking up wasn't such a bad thing, considering the alternative. I pulled myself up and stretched, throwing the covers aside. Unlike after the first dream, my body felt stiff and sore, which I attributed to sleeping too many hours without moving much. Over the next few weeks, I would put the headphones on while doing chores around the house, and I would occasionally wear them to bed. I felt conflicted. The scenario made the dreams seem more like nightmares, but in a weird way, the consistency of the dreams and the voices from the headphones became comforting. Eventually, I didn't feel like I was trapped in a nightmare. Instead, it was like a warm blanket wrapped around me as I drifted off to sleep each night. Then, one day, a few months after I first got the headphones, I had my last dream. I began the routine of settling into bed with the headphones, my head propped up in a way that would keep the headphones from falling off, and the humming of the headphones lulled me to sleep. I woke up in the hospital bed and noticed that seasons had passed since my last dream, even though I had last been in the dream only a day or two earlier. It was winter now, and snow had accumulated on the few cars I could see clearly in the parking lot. As I opened my eyes, I saw that my sister was sitting beside my bed. I tried to speak to her and ask her how long it had been since there was snow outside, but just like in previous dreams, I couldn't. She sat staring at the wall, tears welling up in her eyes. When she finally spoke to me, I could tell from the sound of her voice that she was crying. "It's been months," she said. "I've been trying to get you out of this bed, but nothing seems to be working. It feels like I'm knocking at your door and you're refusing to open it." With every word, I wanted to shout and cry out, but I was helpless. She was silent for what seemed like minutes. She took a deep breath and wiped her tears away, then looked straight into my eyes. I tried to blink, hoping to communicate any way I could, but again, my body wouldn't respond to what my mind was trying to tell it to do. Her gaze shifted to the ceiling, and I could see her lips move. "Isn't enough." Something about the way she said those words made me realize that she was talking to someone else, not me. She continued to stare at the ceiling, and within seconds, the doctor came back into the room, kindly asking her to leave. I watched as they spoke, but their voices became distorted and warped. A nurse I didn't recognize had been standing on the other side of the room and consoled my sister with a hug, as though the two were familiar with one another, despite me not recognizing her. After a moment, my sister wiped her face with a tissue she pulled out of her purse, and she walked over to me while the nurse checked all of the medical devices I was still connected to. "Come back soon, okay?" my sister said, her words barely understandable through the humming noise that had begun to fill my head. She leaned in close, kissing me on the cheek, and as she took the headphones off my head, the room faded from the soft white of the hospital to the darkness of the bedroom I had fallen asleep in. It's been months, and I haven't had another dream since then. Despite wearing the headphones to bed every night, I've only had nights of dreamless sleep. Not wanting to miss any opportunity to hear the voices again, I've even made it a habit to wear the headphones out with me when I leave the house. Truthfully, I don't think that I'll ever be able to truly rest until I have the dream again. Since the final time I saw my sister take the headphones off me in the hospital room, being awake feels more dreamlike than when I thought I had been dreaming. It feels like when I'm awake, I'm watching the world around me through a worn-out camera lens filter, and I'm waiting for the day that wearing the headphones makes things feel real again. When I'm awake, the faces of the people around me have begun to seem hollow and vacant. What disturbs me the most is that even my own sister's face seems unfamiliar, like she's not even herself. Every interaction I have with people I've known almost my whole life makes me doubt that anything I experience is real when I'm awake. Even though I can't go anywhere without them now, part of me wishes I had never put the headphones on in the first place. The more I think about it, the less it makes sense. They don't seem to connect to anything, and after months, I still haven't figured out how they work. When I try to recall the details of how this all started, I'm not even sure that I ever actually ordered them, and if I did, how they could be real. After all, how could anyone make headphones that talk to you without so much as a wireless connection? I can live with not knowing how they work, and I know I probably won't ever have the answer. But what continues to haunt me is not knowing why, after all the dreams I had, I was never able to talk back.